This is NFA Talk, the show that talks about guns and gun rights, keeping you up to date with what's currently going on, from the newest guns, promotions, and events, plus how we're lobbying for your rights.
All right, it's time for another episode of NFA Talk. I'm Jordan Vandenhoff. Joining me is Rick Iggersage, and in just a few moments, we are going to have a special guest. But before we get to that, I just want to make an announcement. So as of today, October 18th, during our live show here, the Liberals have not frozen the handguns yet. So if you're on the fence or you're still thinking, or if you can even still find a handgun in a store, you better act now. Get those transfers in. They have stated that any transfer that was started before the handgun freeze, they will allow to continue. So if you're on the fence, rush out, jump online, do what you got to do. We don't know how long this freeze is going to stay in effect. The NFA plans on, fighting this and challenging this the whole way through. We're not going to give up on you. So I just wanted to make everybody aware. If you're on the fence, do it now. Hey, Rick, how's it going?
Good, Jordan. How are you tonight? Hi, everyone. We're going to do something a little different tonight on NFA Talk. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on some grassroots politics from Ontario and one independent MPP that is trying to make a difference for the people of Ontario at Queen's Park. Our special guest tonight is Bobbi Brady, independent MPP representing Haldimand, Norfolk. Welcome, Bobbi.
Thanks very much, Rick and Jordan. I'm really happy to be here tonight.
I guess we'll start off by you can maybe tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, like you, Rick, I was born and raised in Delhi. I'm a Delhi Raider, bleed blue and gold through and through. Norfolk County has always been my home. I grew up in the country on family farms, and although my parents didn't farm, they weren't farmers, my relatives, including both sets of grandparents, were farmers. I'm very proud of our rural way of life and our agricultural heritage. And, the one thing about the people of our area, and Rick, you would know this, is that we don't ask for much here. We are community-minded people. We have amazing problem solvers, and it makes them very self-sufficient. And, it's for those reasons that I decided to run as an independent in the June election. I am a conservative, but Premier Ford decided that he was going to appoint a candidate that many of us locally could not support. Usually, as many of you know, a nomination night would be called and everyone interested could throw their hat in the ring. I would have been okay with a nomination night, but I wasn't afforded one. So I decided to challenge this what I would consider undemocratic decision. I felt that the deal that was being had for the people of Haldimand, Norfolk was a bad deal. At the end of the day, I believe in blessings in disguise. And right now I feel as though my position as an independent is indeed one of those. It's a blessing in disguise because as I sit at Queen's Park, I can choose to agree or disagree with any issue, regardless of political stripe. And it is all dependent on how my constituents feel. Awesome.
Yeah, and actually, you actually won by quite a number in Haldimand, Norfolk. I remember staying up and watching the results. I was pretty impressed. Actually, you had my vote. We actually met before the election, and I was very, very happy to see that you won because I know we were going to get some good representation at Queen's Park. Anyway, as most of you are aware, there's a lot of things going on at the provincial level as far as Justin Trudeau's order in council gun confiscation. Namely, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, New Brunswick, and the Yukon have all stated that they will not use provincial resources or direct their police forces to seize firearms from law-abiding Canadians. Haldimand, Norfolk is a rural riding in southern Ontario where several sport shooters, hunters, firearms collectors, along with farmers and that use firearms for pest control and to protect their livestock reside. Bobbi has presented Doug Ford with a letter urging him to follow suit to join the other provinces. So, Bobbi, can you tell us what brought this about and what your letter says?
Sure. So the letter is actually written to the Solicitor General, Michael Kersner. And, I wrote the letter because my office, and you alluded to it, we serve many farmers and hunters, target shooters. We began receiving calls and emails about the Prime Minister's buyback of semi-automatic centerfire rifles. And when I looked into this, and discovered that Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, New Brunswick, and the Yukon had all said no, that they would not assist in the buyback from legitimate firearms owners, I decided that, you know what, I had to continue to research. And this is an example of a lack of common sense. We've seen this time and time again with a number of policies, but feel-good headlines on the 6 o'clock news don't necessarily translate into good public policy. Let's be honest. If I truly believe that this initiative would save lives, it would stop the gangbangers in the city, I'd be the first to say, hey, let's do it. But the truth is, this buyback actually puts more power into the hands of criminals and puts us everyday citizens at bigger risk, and it puts us further in debt, quite honestly. Obviously, I'm not the only person who sees this, as we have 5 other leaders who have said they will not commit any resources to the program. And the main reasons I believe those leaders and myself see this as a really bad idea is that we will be taking police officers off the streets to knock on doors and say, hey, do you have a firearm? Well, we already have a shortage of boots on the ground, and criminals will take further advantage of less officers on the road. Police officers assisting with enforcement of this, what I would call misguided federal legislation, will be taken away from vital duties. Let's talk about it. Vital duties like domestic violence calls, dealing with gangs, and stopping the flow of guns from coming across the border. This is being portrayed as a firearms issue, but largely it's a policing resource issue. Police officers across Canada, you know what, they deal with so many technicalities that they enforce on a daily basis. The Highway Traffic Act, the Criminal Code, Controlled Drug and Substance Act, etc. Why do we want to add to their workload? And, let's be honest. Many people don't know the difference between the banned models and models that are not banned. If, for example, if you put in front of me, a Ruger Mini 14 and a Tavor, I wouldn't know which one is legal and which one isn't. I'd probably choose the scariest looking of the two and take a wild guess. And in this case, the scariest gun is the one that is still legal. So, last week I played a little game with a friend, and he showed me 3 different photos of a semi-automatic rimfire, and he asked me to put them in order of power. Well, I thought I had it all figured out real quick, and then I learned that they were all actually the same gun with different stocks. So, like many things in life, things can be very deceiving. So, I guess my letter comes out of a bit of frustration because I'd like to know who the Prime Minister and his folks are consulting with on this buyback. And as a sidebar, I'd like to point out that this was not run through the House, but rather it was an order in Council. And on the contrary, when the Yukon was looking at the buyback, it was an opposition motion that was presented, and all parties worked together to push back against Justin Trudeau. So I would love to see that same all-party cooperation here in Ontario so that we can actually work on policy that will make a difference. When an aircraft crashes, there's a process that's always followed, and deficiencies are corrected. An entire new set of rules isn't drafted, but when there's a gun crime, the investigation ensues, but the result is always increased regulation or changed regulation. And we all know this has done nothing to curb gun-related crime in our cities. Knee-jerk responses and poorly crafted policies cost money, and I believe the gun crime has actually increased. So we have, increased restrictions, and yet we see increased crime. Something doesn't add up here.
Yeah. And your standpoint is from a non-firearms person. I know you've been to the range and fired firearms and stuff, but you're not a firearms person. So your perspective is a little different than either an anti-gun person or a licensed gunner. Can you just touch on that a bit there, Bobbi?
Yeah, no, I'm not a firearms owner, and none of my immediate family are firearms owners. I've shot firearms, as you said, in the past, and during the campaign, I stopped at the Waterford Gun Club, and I spoke to law-abiding gun owners about the constant attack on their sport and on their, what they do to fill freezers. And there's some out there who aren't going to like what I'm saying. They're going to accuse me of being, a gun-toting Beth Dutton country girl. But you know what? I'm not, and I have no desire to be a gun owner. But I think that's actually what makes me more credible when it comes to my stance. I'm not trying to protect my sport or my interest. I do, however, have many friends and relatives who are farmers, who are hunters, and they're law abiding. And, they do. There's a heritage down here of filling our freezers with meat, and that's still legal. And, their guns are not the guns that are being used in crimes downtown Toronto or in any other city. So this is about common sense for me. And it's about highlighting the fact that this buyback initiative is a waste of taxpayer money, because it's not going to, net us positive results.
Yeah. And you got a comment there?
Yeah, no, I just want to say, like, Bobbi, and that's like, it's great listening to you. You nailed a whole bunch of points, that our listeners, you should listen to, right? With the, taking away the resources of our police, it's almost like the robber that calls in a fake domestic, sends all the cops across town so they can quickly go rob the bank, right? It's kind of the same scenario. Now our government's sending the cops door to door and leaving, everything else wide open for these criminals. So it's irresponsible of this government to go this route. Has there been any talk in Queen's Park with the gun legislation, or is it being discussed, or rumors floating around?
Well, we've been on a bit of a recess since September 14th, and we do go back next Tuesday, October 25th. So, I suspect there may be talk when we get back there, because I'm sure there's talk. Anyway, I haven't heard anything. I am still waiting for a response to the letter to the Solicitor General. I would really hope that a Conservative government here would work with, those on all sides of the House to say, hey, look, you know what? If this did make sense, then we could support this. But this isn't good for any of us. It's a bad deal. And, I go back to that question about who is Justin Trudeau consulting with on gun policy. It seems that whomever they are consulting with, it's really one-sided. So therefore, my suspicion is that it's only the anti-gun lobby. And, I have yet to find a gun owner and experts in the industry who believe Canada's gun regulations are effective. And again, it boils down to common sense. Why don't we actually consult with those involved? Why don't we consult with, guys who own gun shops, gun owners, farmers, hunters, law-abiding owners who, want fair but also effective policy? It's actually in their best interest to have effective policy. And I relate it to, and this may be hard for some people to understand, but I relate it to, the guy who runs a fur farm. And PETA's constantly showing up, and animal rights activists. Those animals are usually treated very well, because it's in the best interest of the farmer to treat his animals well, because that's how he gets top money for their fur. So it's the same thing with guns. I mean, if I'm a gun owner and I want to continue to hunt and I want to continue to sport shoot, then darn right, I want the best policy, because I don't want the constant attack on my sport or my hobby.
Or your personal property.
Right. Well, that's a whole other subject of
exactly.
Talk.
Yeah.
We might have to get into that at some point.
Yeah, I think we probably should. I can answer some of the questions, like who's designing these orders in council and gun laws. It's bureaucrats and lawyers. No gun, as far as we can see, there's no gun people involved. Even the parts that the RCMP are making comments on are RCMP guys that don't know or don't care about firearms. It's all a big political game as far as we're concerned with this stuff. Just for example, when going back to the order in council, the original ban, and when Justin Trudeau did it after the tragedy in Nova Scotia, and Kristen Freeland made the comment, and this one, I've mentioned this on NFA Talk before, sticks in my head. She made the comment that we banned a lot of these firearms because they look scary. I go, and that she actually made that comment. So, that tells you exactly where these people are coming from.
Mm-hmm. And it's that mentality that people, have a hard time seeing through when that is said on the 6 o'clock news. People they drink that right up, right? And I'll go back to it. When the government can come up with something that actually combats gun crime, I will stand up and I will be supportive. But until then, all this is doing is giving the public, giving the taxpayer false security. And it's all at their expense. And that's what people, all of these people out there who may be watching this, who are going, oh, this country girl doesn't know what she's talking about. No. You need to look deeper into the issue, because it's false sense of security. Our streets are not safer because of liberal gun policy, nor will they be safer because of this buyback program. It's actually going to make things worse. So it's a false sense of security, and we are paying dearly for it.
Yeah. And that's some of our fears too. When these confiscations do start, they don't have any kind of anything in place yet. I know they're working in a lot of different directions, but okay. So even if Doug Ford does decide not to use Ontario resources to do that, which I don't know if he's going to or not, if he doesn't, so if they come up with another plan, like I wouldn't want to be the person going to a person's house and then trying to take their personal property. It just, I don't think this whole thing is well thought out. Well, we know it's not well thought out, but the directions that this could go is just absolutely scary. And these are law-abiding, vetted firearms owners, and but some people are just angry. Like I talk to firearms owners every day, and people are just angry. They're, and it's not just the firearms owners, Bobby, and it's people that are starting to fall along because of the personal property issue. Right. People are mad because the government can come to your house and seize your personal property, which just isn't right in Canada.
Well, I'm glad they're paying attention now, because it's been a slippery slope for a long time. And like I say, property rights is a whole other issue, but people should be upset. Nobody should be able to come on our property and take something if you are a law-abiding citizen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to add in too, though, like people are starting to get upset too, because now they figured out that they're footing the bill for this, right? Like, the government, the Liberal government or Trudeau government basically said, hey, it's only going to cost $756 million. And already, we've estimated well into the billions of dollars for this. And you know what? Like, who's paying for this? The taxpayers are paying for this, right? And that's why the Liberal government, they're doing a lot of fear mongering with these commercials on TV. We have to get these off the streets. Well, these firearms are not on the streets. They're in the hands of well-vetted Canadian citizens, responsible firearms owners in safes with safe storage within their house. We have strict regulations to, we can only go directly to the range and back. If we go anywhere else, we have to get permission with an authorization to transport. We're not the ones that are a problem. So, the government's going to focus all their money and all the taxpayer money on something that's not a problem. Meanwhile, what are they focusing on? Border protection, like not even 1/4 of what they're spending on buying back these guns. So, I don't blame the taxpayers for being upset over this.
And I'd love to maybe just say that, I do know that Premier Ford has spoken up to the feds with respect to, leaning on the U.S. to do a better job, because we know the guns are coming across the border, being smuggled into Canada. So I know the Premier has done that, and I encourage him to continue to do that. But at the same time, he's got to stand up to this buyback and say, no, thanks, we're opting out as well.
Absolutely. There's another thing, and we're going to need another whole show to touch on this, but it's actual revenue loss for the people of Ontario. Mm-hmm. Gun shops, with this latest Bill C-21, with this handgun freeze and the freeze of all imports of handguns into Ontario, the revenue loss is going to be substantial. We try to get the numbers from our government. Of course, they wouldn't give it to us, but we actually got the numbers from our colleagues in the United States of the guns that were shipped into Canada, and it's going to be in the millions, if not billions, of dollars of revenue loss, job loss. These people don't take any of this into account. It's all, make the streets safer by clamping down on vetted legal gun owners, instead of, Justin Trudeau dropping maximum sentences on offenders. He's going in that direction. If you get caught with a gun, you're probably going to do less time than somebody like myself that didn't renew his PAL in time. I'm probably going to get a more severe fine than the guy on the street that does an armed robbery.
Well, it's knee jerk, and it's intended for that crowd that doesn't understand, doesn't educate themselves on these issues, right? And it looks good on the 6 o'clock news in the city. It looks as though they're doing something. It's showing sham politics. That's all it is.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and you and I both live in Haldeman, Norfolk, and we're a big rural riding, and people here, it's funny because you actually hear the talk on the streets at the local coffee shops. They're actually talking about this stuff, which is unheard of, in the past. But it's starting to make people mad, and it's time we got mad. And I'm so glad that we have a representative like you at Queen's Park that actually has a voice and is not afraid to voice your opinion and make some difference. That makes myself and the people of Haldeman, Norfolk very, very proud.
Oh, thanks, Rick.
You're welcome.
I will continue to stand up for what is right, and it may not be popular, but it'll be right. Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll be serving here for a long, long time, just like your colleague Toby Barrett there. He was our guy for a long time, and I know you worked with him for 20 years?
23 years. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
started when I was 5.
Yeah, and actually, one of your people actually does some work for us. Jeff, he does some columns and stuff for our Canadian Firearms Journal that we put out every couple months. So I know Jeff well. I've known him for a long time. I know him since we were basically young adults, and a great guy. And shout out to him because he does some really, really good work for the Canadian Firearms Journal.
Yeah, Jeff's a great guy. Wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jordan, any more questions for Bobbi Ann?
Well, no, I mean, at the point now, Ontario's kind of sitting on the edge. Like Rick said earlier, a lot of the other provinces have already jumped on board. So, I don't know if Mr. Ford is watching our show or if he actually tunes in, but Ontario's waiting.
Yeah,
maybe if you get a chance, you might want to relay that to him. I got the pleasure to meet Mr. Ford when he was campaigning to first become the premier, and he was down in Welland, and everybody got a chance to go up and say hello and shake his hand, and I went up to Mr. Ford and I said, hi, I'm Jordan, and I enjoy firearms. I enjoy hunting. I enjoy sport shooting. And he looked at, and I said, when it comes down to it, if you can help us in any way, when, the feds say, hey, we're doing gun control, if you can be vocal for Ontario, I'd greatly appreciate that. And he looked at me and he shook my hand. He said, don't you worry, I'm a hunter as well. So at that time, it was reassuring. I hope maybe he's going to follow through with that and stick up to Mr. Mendocino and Mr. Trudeau and say, hey, Ontario's not on board.
Yeah,
let's hope so.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you'll be talking to some of your colleagues at Queen's Park and kind of swaying them in our direction, also, Bobbi. And I think you're the right person for the job for that.
Well, I will do my absolute best, and yes, I will walk across the aisle and have some of those discussions next week. I look forward to going back, actually.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I think
so. I think we've pretty much covered everything tonight. Maybe we'll wrap it up at this point.
Yep, I think so, and maybe we'll do this again, and we'll touch on some other topics that involve the provincial federal crossover as far as firearms and personal property. Anyway, on behalf of Canada's National Firearms Association, Bobbi Ann, thank you for being our guest tonight. We sure appreciate it, and it was very enlightening for me, and I'm sure for our viewers right across Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
All right, thanks. And everybody that tuned in, until next time.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to this episode of NFA Talk. Like and follow the NFA on social media and sign up to become a member.